Deep in southwest Alaska, there's a lake so big, locals call it an inland sea. It's called Lake Iliamna. It's about 77 miles long, up to 22 miles wide, and in places, the water drops almost 1,000 feet down. For generations, the people who've lived on its shores have told the same warning to their children to stay off the water when it turns wrong. Because something lives beneath Lake Iliamna. Something they say has dragged fishermen under, torn apart boats, and killed people who got too close to the deep water. For centuries, outsiders called it folklore. Then, in 1942, a bush pilot and a government wildlife agent flew low over the lake and said they saw something that shouldn't exist. Since then, the reports have never stopped. Nobody has ever caught it. Nobody has ever proven what it is. But the warnings and the sightings keep coming. In this video, we'll look at what people have actually reported, what the old stories say, and what science has found. Then you can decide for yourself. Let's start with the lake itself, and why it's exactly the kind of place something could stay hidden for 1,000 years. The setting. To understand why Lake Iliamna is a good place for something to hide, you need to understand the lake itself. Most lakes are closed off, cut away from the ocean. Lake Iliamna is different. It connects to the sea through a river called the Kvichak River, which flows out to Bristol Bay and the Bering Sea. Because of that connection, sea animals can swim into the lake. This is not a guess, it is a fact. Lake Iliamna is home to one of the only freshwater seal populations in the entire world. These are seals that normally live in the ocean, but here they live hundreds of miles inland, in fresh water. If seals can make that journey from the sea into the lake, it raises a fair question. What else could have made the same trip long ago? The lake is also one of the largest lakes in the entire United States, not just Alaska. It covers about 1,000 square miles. In some spots, it is close to 1,000 feet deep, and every year, millions of sockeye salmon swim into this lake, making it home to the largest salmon run of its kind in the world. That much food, every single year, is more than enough to feed a very large predator, if one is living there. And then there is the cold. Deep lakes like this one often have what's called a thermocline. That's a layer where warm water on top meets much colder water below. Below that layer, the water is dark, and boats' sonar does not always work well there. Something large could be sitting 50 feet under a boat, and the people on that boat would have no way of knowing. Add in the fact that most of this lake has no roads, no towns, and very few visitors, and you get a place that is about as hard to watch as any body of water in North America. So the setting fits. Whether or not something unknown lives in Lake Iliamna, this lake is exactly the kind of place where it could go undetected for a very long time. But it is big enough to feed something. Is it also old enough to have birthed a legend long before anyone had a camera? The old stories. Long before airplanes or sonar, the native peoples of this region were already telling stories about Lake Iliamna. In fact, the lake's own name may come from one of these stories. Early government researchers in Alaska recorded that the word Iliamna was tied to a legend of a giant mythical blackfish, one said to bite holes in the boats of anyone who was not careful or not respectful of the water. The lake may have been named after the very creature people still talk about today. The Tlingit people spoke of a being called Gonakadet. In their stories, Gonakadet had the head of a wolf and the body of an orca whale. It was seen as a powerful spirit, one that could bring good luck, but one that could also pull people beneath the water. The Aleut and Yup'ik peoples told a different story, about creatures called Jig-ik-nak. These were not spirits. They were described as real animals, large fish-like creatures that hunted in groups. According to the stories, they could attack boats and had killed people who traveled too far from shore. These were not just scary tales told for fun. They were warnings, passed from parents to children, the same way people today teach children to stay away from a dangerous road or a deep river current. Elders taught the young ones to watch for signs. strange ripples on calm water, fish suddenly swimming away all at once for no clear reason. When Russian traders came to Alaska in the 1700s, they heard these same warnings from local people. At first, they did not take them seriously. Over time, some of their own written records described boats being struck by something unseen in the lake and people who went missing on the water. Today, most locals simply call the creature Illy, a short, almost friendly nickname, not unlike how Scotland's famous lake monster became known as Nessie. These old stories do not prove a monster is real, but they show one thing clearly. The idea of something dangerous living in Lake Iliamna is not a new idea invented for television. It is a belief passed down for generations by people who spent their whole lives on that water. But in 1942, the story stopped being just local legend. 1942, the sighting that changed everything. It happened on an ordinary flight. A bush pilot named Babe Allsworth was flying over Lake Iliamna with a man named Bill Hammersley. Allsworth had crossed this lake more times than he could count. He knew what it was supposed to look like. As they passed low over the deep water near an island in the middle of the lake, something below the surface caught his eye. Small specks, moving. He banked the plane around for a closer look. On the second pass, both men got a clear view, and what they saw didn't make sense. Several large shapes swimming just beneath the surface, a dull silvery gray, almost like aluminum, longer than the plane's pontoon, their heads wide and blunt. Years later, describing the moment in detail to a researcher, Allsworth remembered one thing above everything else: the tails. They moved side to side as the animals swam, not up and down, the way a whale's tail moves. That single detail is what makes this sighting hard to dismiss. Whales move their tails vertically. Fish move theirs side to side. Allsworth had flown over whales in the ocean plenty of times. He knew exactly what he was comparing it to, and whatever he saw that day, it did not move like a whale. Allsworth and Hammersley weren't hunting a monster. They were just flying to a nearby village. But when they landed and told people what they'd seen, it wasn't easy to laugh off. A working bush pilot and a government wildlife agent telling the same story, about something with no name. 46 years later, in 1988, a researcher tracked Allsworth down and asked him to go through it one more time. He hadn't changed a single detail. He stood by every word. That afternoon over the water didn't just add one more story to the pile, it opened the door. Within a few years, other pilots, men who had no reason to lie and every reason to keep their reputations intact, started coming forward with stories of their own. More eyes on the water. Once Allsworth's story got out, he was not the only one talking anymore. In 1945, a survey pilot named Larry Rost was flying low over the lake. He said he saw a giant fish, more than 20 feet long, the same dull aluminum color that Allsworth had described years before. He was so startled that he circled back for a second look. In 1959, a wealthy adventurer named Tom Slick, who was known for funding searches for unusual creatures around the world, paid Allsworth to fly a special aerial search of the lake, looking just for this mystery animal. That search came back empty. Whatever was out there, it did not show itself that day. In 1960, a geologist flying over the lake with two other passengers reported seeing not one, but 4 separate creatures at once, each one about 10 feet long. In 1963, a wildlife biologist reported seeing a creature about 25 to 30 feet long while flying alone over the lake. What stood out to him was how long it stayed under. He watched for about 10 minutes, and the animal never once came up for air. In 1967, a missionary named Chuck Krapachetz said he saw the creature while flying over the lake. He tried to radio someone on the ground to confirm it, but by the time anyone arrived, it was gone. Determined to prove what he saw, he and a friend later rigged a steel aircraft cable with large hooks, baited with meat, and tied it to the floats of a small plane. According to his account, something hit that line with so much force that it knocked him right off the plane's floats and into the water. Then, in 1977, a pilot named Tim Laporte was flying over the lake with another passenger. Both of them saw a large, dark shape under the surface, leaving a wake as it moved. Laporte had spent plenty of time flying over whales out on the ocean, and he was clear about one thing. Whatever this was, it did not look or move like a whale. None of these people knew each other. They were flying at different times, in different years, for different reasons. But they kept describing the same basic thing: a large animal, longer than most fish should be, moving in a way that did not match anything they could name. By the late 1970s, this had gone from one strange story to a pattern, and that pattern was about to catch the attention of the whole state. The $100,000 question. By 1979, so many people had reported seeing something in Lake Iliamna that a newspaper called the Anchorage Daily News decided to act. They offered a reward of $100,000 to anyone who could bring back real proof. A clear photograph, a body, something that could not be argued with. That kind of money got attention. Researchers, fishermen, and curious travelers headed out to the lake with all kinds of equipment. Some brought serious scientific tools like sonar and underwater cameras. Others brought far simpler gear and a lot of hope. At least one person reportedly tried playing music over the water, hoping to draw the creature up to the surface. The results were mixed. Sonar picked up large objects moving through the deep water at depths and speeds that did not match any known fish in the lake. Underwater cameras caught shapes in the murky water, but never anything clear enough to identify. Hydrophones, which are underwater microphones, picked up strange low sounds that could not be explained. But nobody brought back a photo good enough to win the money. No body was found. No one could say for certain what they were seeing. The $100,000 reward went unclaimed. Still, the search left something behind. It showed that there were real, unexplained readings coming from that lake, over and over. That does not prove a monster is down there, but it made it harder for anyone to say that nothing unusual was happening in Lake Iliamna at all. The legend continues. Sightings became less frequent, but didn't stop entirely. In 2017, near the village of Kokonok, several people said they saw not one, but 3 large creatures in the lake at the same time. One local fisherman, Gary Nielsen, a man with years of experience on Iliamna's waters, described the biggest of the 3 this way. It looked twice the size of a 32-foot fishing boat. Think about that for a moment. A 32-foot boat is already a fairly large boat. He was describing something that looked twice that length. This sighting matters for one simple reason. It shows that whatever people have been reporting for over 80 years is not just old history, something that only happened to pilots flying wooden planes in the 1940s. People living near this lake right now, in modern times, with phones and cameras in their pockets, are still saying the same thing their grandparents said. The story of Lake Iliamna has not gone quiet. It is still being told by people watching the water today. What science thinks it is. So if something really is moving through Lake Iliamna, what could it be? Scientists have offered a few honest guesses. None of them are proven, but some of them are worth hearing. The first idea comes from a biologist named Bruce Wright. He pointed to the Pacific sleeper shark. These sharks live in cold, deep water, and some have been measured at over 20 feet long. They can live for a very long time, possibly over 100 years. Sleeper sharks are also known to swim into river systems, which means it is at least possible for one to travel from the ocean into a lake like Iliamna. The problem is, nobody has ever found or photographed a sleeper shark in the lake. It remains a guess, not a confirmed answer. A second idea is the white sturgeon. Sturgeon are large, slow fish that can grow up to 20 feet long and live for over 100 years. This theory became widely known after the television show River Monsters featured Lake Iliamna. with host Jeremy Wade favoring the sturgeon explanation. If sturgeon really do live in Lake Iliamna, it would be the farthest north this fish has ever been found. Again, no sturgeon has ever actually been caught or confirmed in the lake. A third, much simpler idea is misidentification. Remember, Lake Iliamna really does have freshwater seals, and beluga whales have been seen in the river that connects to the lake. From a distance, or from high up in a small plain, a seal or a beluga could easily be mistaken for something bigger and stranger than it really is. None of these explanations perfectly match every report. The sleeper shark theory does not explain why witnesses describe several animals moving together, since these sharks are usually loners. The sturgeon theory does not explain the metallic silver color that many witnesses describe. And misidentification does not explain sightings from experienced pilots who already knew what seals and whales look like from the air. In short, science has real, reasonable guesses. It does not have a confirmed answer. Where that leaves us. So, after all of this, what can we really say about Lake Iliamna? We know the lake itself is real, huge, and remote enough to hide almost anything. We know the native peoples of this region have warned about something dangerous in that water for a very long time, long before any camera or sonar existed. We know that respected people, pilots, a biologist, a missionary, have reported seeing large, unknown animals in that lake since the 1940s. And we know that modern searches have picked up strange readings that nobody has been able to fully explain. What we do not know is what that something actually is. Nobody has ever caught it. Nobody has ever taken a clear photo of it. Nobody has ever washed up on shore. The $100,000 reward from 1979 is still unclaimed all these years later. That means the honest answer is not, the monster is real, and it is not, the monster is fake. The honest answer is that something has been happening in Lake Iliamna for a very long time. Something that has made careful, serious people report the same strange thing, again and again. And science has not yet been able to say exactly what it is. Maybe it is a sleeper shark that found its way into the lake. Maybe it is a sturgeon nobody has documented yet. Maybe it is simply seals and belugas, seen at the wrong angle, at the wrong time. Or maybe, just maybe, there is something in that cold, deep water that we have not identified yet. Until someone gets that clear photo or finds real physical proof, Lake Iliamna will keep its secret. $100,000 reward, still unclaimed.